Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed. I attend John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and this is a podcast based on the penology. In this discussion, we will be talking about the detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Please introduce yourself, my friend.
I'm Florabella Castillo.
What college are you attending? Like, what's your major?
Lehman College, and I'm majoring in nursing.
Okay, cool. And what else are we going to talk about today? And are you interested in talking about the topics? Which topics are you the most interested in for today's discussion?
I think about the treatment that they received during their imprisonment.
So let's talk about treatment. What? So before we get into the discussion of the treatments that the detainees receive in Guantanamo Bay, I would first like to explain what penology is. So penology is the penalty for disobedience. Penology is the study and punishment and rehabilitation of criminals within the criminal justice system. It emphasizes the principle, theories, and practices related to control and treatment of individuals who have committed crimes. Penology aims to understand the effectiveness and other forms of punishment and correlational method to maintain social order. So my first experience with the penal system was when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, I used to live in Bangladesh, and there's this theft that happened in the village that I was living in, and the way the criminal got punished was he was literally brought in front of the entire town and punished in kicked and beaten and hurt in front of everyone and by everyone. That was his penalty. What would you be able to think of a situation where you notice penology or you notice penalty? Any situation in your life. Let's first talk about our situations with penology, and then we'll jump into the discussion of the detainees at Guantanamo Bay.
I think in any neighborhood, not so long ago, a few years ago, maybe last year, there was a shooting outside of the building in front of the deli, and then it was on the news, and there was also people coming, and there were children during the shooting.
Okay.
And I think the person that they were targeting, they did get shot, but they tried to get in, shield themselves behind the children because they were avoiding that.
Okay, so the criminal was shielding themselves behind the children, the shooter, right? And and what was the punishment for the shooter? The penalty.
So he did get shot, but
So
he didn't die, but he got hurt.
So right, so the criminal got shot by the police?
No, it was other people. Probably some kind of gang or.
Okay, so gang violence, and did the police come or?
Not until after.
Okay, so the police did end up coming, and the police investigated. So the penalty for the criminals who committed this violent act of shooting, right, would be detained or would be imprisonment in the American system, right? That would be your first recollection of crime and penalty, right? Would you agree? So that's our introduction, and now we will jump right into detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Okay, guys, so we're jumping into the topic of the detainees at Guantanamo Bay. So the first question that I have you is, do you know why? So you did some research about the topic yesterday because I told you that this is what we're going to talk about. But do you have any idea or any information on why they're called Guantanamo-based detainees? Why are they detained in Guantanamo Bay?
They're saying because they're suspected of terrorist crimes.
Right, so they're detained because they're suspected of terrorist crimes, but they also could have been detained within the United States, right? However, they're not detained in the United States. They're detained outside of our land in Guantanamo Bay. Why do you think that is?
Well, when I was researching, I saw that the base was held in Cuba.
Right.
And that's it's not within U.S. territory, but it's still under U.S. influence, so they have control over that area. it's not in the United States territory, it doesn't necessarily follow like the rules. So they're able to like be flexible and like do inhumane treatment and stuff like that.
Right, I 100% agree with that. I think, well, the reason we talked about this in class, the reason the base is located in Cuba is so that the U.S. Constitution does not apply to the detainees. And the U.S. Constitution provides individual with the way to justice through our justice system. However, if the base is not within the United States, it's in a different location, then that constitution does not apply to the detainees because they're not within the United States. Now, going into the question, what is the legal basis for definitions of individual in Guantanamo Bay, and how does it differ from traditional criminal justice system? So, traditional criminal justice system would be our justice system here versus the justice system in Guantanamo Bay. So here, if a criminal gets arrested, they go through a trial. They have their own lawyers. They have a certain date where they will go to court. They can buy their lawyers, or they can even get out of jail by paying bond. How is Guantanamo Bay detention or Guantanamo Bay imprisonment different from our traditional system?
Well, it's different because they're there for like an indefinite amount of time. They aren't provided, like you said, with a trial. Like they have it, but it's not. They're like imprisoned without like a crime. You know what I mean? Like they're just put in, but they don't have a good reason as to why they're there.
Right. A documentary that I watched. No, I agree with you. A documentary that I watched was 25% of the people, 25% of Guantanamo detainees are hard criminals, and they're detained for a reason. 25%, and the rest 75%, they're not hard criminals. They're either totally innocent, and they had nothing to do with terrorism, and some of them are somewhat related to terrorism, right? So these 25%, I would say that the lack of access to due process human rights concerns about the fairness and legality of their treatment. So the detention of individuals in Guantanamo Bay is based on the concept of enemy combatants. So the people or the individuals who are detained at the Guantanamo Bay prison, they're not even prisoners of war. When two countries go to war and they detain each other's military, they're not even called prisoners of war. They're called enemy combatants, right? And the authorization of use of military force passed after 9/11 attacks. Unlike traditional criminal justice systems, detainees may be held without specific criminal charges and face military commissions instead of civil courts. So they go through a militarized court system instead of our civilized court system within the United States. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that is right, or do you think that's wrong and they should go through something that we go through? Like, what's your opinion?
I also saw that they were classified as the enemy combatants instead of prisoners of war, because if they're prisoners of war under the Geneva Conventions, they were saying that they're justified to have certain rights.
Right.
Like I don't remember what it was, but it was something about them having like the right to humane treatment,
right?
Proper
exactly.
living conditions.
That's exactly what I was going to get to. No, it's true. It's so true. So, talk about Geneva Convention on human rights of human right violation of detainees, right? So, just because they're under the military system, under the justice system of the military, they do not get that Geneva Convention, or they don't have any protection to their rights. Which now I will go to torture, right? Now, do you think do you think terrorists, 25% terrorists being tortured in Guantanamo Bay, is that something you would agree with?
Um, I feel like I could go like on both sides. Like I can agree with it, but I could also disagree with it.
In what aspects would you agree? What let's do the disagreement. Why would you disagree to the fact that they're getting their rights violated? Like, and I'm not even talking about their like simple rights violated. They're being tortured, they're being lacerated, they're being force fed. Some detainees said in interviews that they have even gotten their genitals cut off, so which is very extreme. The American military is going very extreme with these torturous methods. Why would you disagree with the idea of using this much force on detainees?
I think like many of those methods, it's like so much of an extremity. Like one of the methods that I saw was like they used waterboarding.
Right.
So they like put a cloth over their head and like pour water over them. So that's like they're experiencing like suffocation. And I feel like those methods are like very traumatizing for like, their mental health and psychological issues that they may have. So it's like bad for them.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not like even if it is physical, it's also mental.
Well, I'll agree that like very extreme penalty is bad for them, but you have to look at the fact that these some of these guys are terrorists.
Mm.
They are planning to bomb or attack American citizens and American infrastructure, which kills hundreds and thousands of people. Like, would you rather catch a criminal and penalize them, hold them and torture them to find out where they have planted a bomb, which may save, let's say, 1,000 American citizens, or would you not torture them at all and let the bomb blow up and 1,000 citizens dies?
I also thought about that, like even if it's not about their personal health, like let's say, um, like in the news, like how it's like out in the open, like everyone knows about Guantanamo Bay, like about all the treatment that they give their detainees. So let's say like other terrorists, they know about that, so they could like retaliate if you get worse.
What do you mean they can retaliate?
Like they would want to get like revenge. Like let's say they knew like one of the people that were detained and they want to like revenge them, like get payback, like that kind of treatment for like the people that they're associated with.
Okay, but like how? So that person who wants to get the payback, are they like held in the system?
No, they're like outside of it. Like
But that
people that aren't caught yet,
right.
or they're like getting to doing something bad, they could do something worse.
Right, but that's the whole point of Guantanamo Bay not being in the United States, because that was another one thing that came up. So I think the Bush administration, or I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, but I think the Bush administration, what they wanted to do was they wanted to move the detainees from Guantanamo Bay to American prisons, to American land. And what the media and people said was, once you move those terrorists from Guantanamo Bay to American land, we as America as a whole become a target because they're going to take revenge on us, and they're going to target Americans and American land. So that's one of the reasons. That's why they left the detainees at Guantanamo Bay away from American land, right?
But yeah, that makes sense. But wouldn't America, like United States, still be targeted because they know Guantanamo Bay is under the control of the United States because it's United States territory, not on the territory, but it's still
Well,
under their control. Because they
I
know
can
Cuba
say
is their property.
Cuba is not
No.
American property. It
But
can
like
be
they're
influenced.
under,
Yeah,
they're influenced.
it can be influenced. Well, I have to give that to you, sure. But let's move on to the next question. What are the challenges in determining the legal status of detainees and providing them with due process rights? Yeah, sure. I'm asking you.
Um, can you say it again?
Sure. The question was, what are the challenges in determining the legal status of detainees and providing them with their due process rights?
Well, I think, like I was said before, like the general classification that they're given, because they're enemy combatants, there's like a loophole that they use, so they don't have like the general rights that any other person would have in like trials, because they're charged without even having something. So they're like, it takes them a long time to even get to their trial.
Right. So, I mean, even some of the combatants, right? Some of the individuals held at Guantanamo Bay, they don't even have a reason. They got swapped out by the American military somewhere in Afghanistan, and they're held in Guantanamo Bay without a reason. They don't even know why they're there. Would you agree? Yes. Okay. Jumping into the third question. So we have kind of discussed this before, but let's discuss it more in depth. How have the interrogation techniques employed at Guantanamo Bay been viewed by international organizations and human rights advocates? So we can think of international organizations um, as Geneva Convention. Would you say that's one interrogation, not interrogation, but one international organization that really advocates for human rights? Because the Geneva Convention was made to um, protect prisoners of war. Am I correct? Sure. So can you tell us more about the Geneva Convention?
Well, there's like different categories for like different types of people in their different situations.
Right. So
Like,
you can give us like the first three categories, or you can give us some of the categories, right? And then you can tell us which one would apply the most to our prison of or the detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Right. Go ahead.
so the first Geneva
Just speak up a
Convention,
little bit, like when you talk. Just speak up. Sorry. Go ahead.
the first one talks about like the treatment of wounded and sick military personnel on the battlefield. So it sets the foundation for provision of medical care and protection for the wounded and sick soldiers, as well as medical personnel and medical facilities.
Okay.
The second one is it mostly focuses on the protection of wounded, sick, and shipwrecked military personnel at sea during naval warfare. And the third one is it addresses the treatment of prisoners of war. So it sets out and protects the captured military personnel, ensuring their humane treatment and proper conditions of detention.
Sorry. Let's repeat the third one because I believe it's the most important one.
So the third treaty addresses the treatment of prisoners of war. It sets out rules and protections for captured military personnel, ensuring their humane treatment and proper conditions of detention.
So okay. So some may argue that the Geneva Convention does not apply to the detainees just because they're not detainees, right? They are military combatants. Or sorry, they're combatants, right? So the Geneva Convention does not even apply to them. But that's just one aspect, right? Let's say that it does apply to them. How does it violate their rights of detention or even their rights of torture? So, in order to add something to your statement, we can say that the International Committee of Red Cross, the ICRS, these organizations have expressed concerns over the treatment of detainees, lack of due process, and the conditions of their detention. So even on the first, can you go back to the first amendment or the first protection of rights? Can you reread the first one?
So the first treaty deals with the treatment of wounded and sick military personnel on the battlefield.
Right. So even though they're not state military personnel, we can say that a lot of these detainees are held in unhygienic cells, jail cells, and they're not even provided with proper medical attention. Would you agree? Um, these organizations have expressed again concerns over the lack of treatment of detainees and due process. One of the main issues highlighted by human rights advocates is the use of enhanced interrogation techniques on detainees, which has been widely criticized as as torture. These techniques have included waterboarding, like you said, stress positions, sleep deprivation, and prolonged isolation, among others. Critics argue that these methods violate international human rights norms and prohibition of torture under international law, including the Geneva Conventions. These Conventions are set on international treaties and establish the humanitarian rules of war, aimed at protecting citizens and prisoners of war during armed conflicts. The treatment of detainees at Guantanamo Bay has raised concerns about potential violations of the Third Geneva Convention, which you have mentioned, which governs the treatment of prisoners of war. Under these Under this convention, prisoners of war must be treated humanely, with dignity, and without any adverse distinction. They are protected from violence, intimidation, insults, and public custody, which we know in Guantanamo Bay, none of these applies to the detainees. So this is just one. These are just human rights that every prisoner should be held to. Like just for example, in Guantanamo Bay, many of the detainees, states that in interviews, many of the detainees states that they have gotten their Qurans. You know what Quran? It's like a religious book. They have gotten their Quran taken away, or they have gotten their Quran pissed on, or even like bodily fluid. It's like embarrassment to their religion, like in front of them. Like how would that make you feel? They don't. Some of them they don't even get. Yeah, exactly. It would it would definitely make you feel disrespected. Human rights advocates and legal experts have also argued that the treatment of detainees at Guantanamo Bay include the use of harsh interrogation techniques is inconsistent with the principles of Geneva Convention. They argue that the prolonged and inhumane treatment of detainees at the facility undermines the values of international law and human rights. The controversy surrounding Guantanamo Bay has promoted calls from international organizations and human rights advocates for the facility closure and the U.S. government to address allegations of abuse, ensure full compliance with the international human rights standards, including the Geneva Conventions. These issues remain these issues remain open and has sparked ongoing debates about the balance between national security interests and the respect for human rights and international law. So, um, just to reiterate, or just to ask a final question based on this subtopic, is the fact that would you value human rights over national security?
Mm, I don't think so. I think I would favor national security.
You would favor national security more than human rights violations? Really?
I think so.
Why? Why is that? Would you explain more in that?
Well, because right, like the terrorists or the people suspected of doing those crimes, they're like it's like very endangering to like other people. If they're put away, it's like more secure. It's like less of a threat to everyone else. And like I don't want to be like disrespectful to them or anything, but sometimes when people commit certain crimes, I feel like it is deserved that they get some type of punishment, but it doesn't have to be like that extreme.
Right, no, I 100% agree with you. However, the dilemma comes out to the fact that not like I stated before, not everyone being detained, right? And not everyone being detained at the place deserves to be detained. Only 25% are hard criminals, and the rest are not. Some of them are not even criminals, and they're still going through the process of of torture and interrogation as the hard criminals are going through. So, what do you have to say for that?
Well, I'm not sure because I feel like they should be allowed like basic breaks, but also like you can't really get like I feel like the most efficient, not efficient, but like to get information out of people, sometimes you have to be a little aggressive.
Right. Well, what? Sorry, keep going. Okay, so what I would say would be would be before we even detain the detainees to punish them, right, with these torturous methods, we would really want to have evidence or dig deep into the lives of these individuals that we're detaining before we even bring them to Guantanamo Bay, so that we have
Or
something.
like a background check.
Not well. We won't be able to do a background check on an individual in Saudi Arabia or in Afghanistan because how would you be? I mean, you can do it double digging if you're like in the CIA or FBI. You can have direct evidence on their crimes and on their terrorism before we bring them to Guantanamo Bay, right? So if that's the case and we have direct evidence on these individuals, then I don't think using these torturous methods to bring out information would be necessarily that harmful. But what I do have a problem with is the fact that 75% of the individuals locked up in Guantanamo Bay are not even hard criminals. They don't. Most of them are Uyghur Muslims or Chinese Muslims fleeing from punishment in China, and they have came to Afghanistan or Iraq and have been swapped up by the FBI or CIA and brought to Guantanamo Bay, and they're living a horrible life away from their families, away from their daily lives. These are individuals who deserve human rights because they haven't broken any law or haven't committed any acts of terrorism. So I believe these individuals should be outsourced and they should be picked apart and sent back to their homeland where they originally want to go. Correct? Would you agree?
Isn't that what they do
Where?
at the prison, like afterwards?
Right. So afterwards, in the modern days, what they have done, they have sent many terrorists back to their homeland. These are like even hard terrorists, even some terrorists or some individuals who haven't done like Uyghur Muslims, they have sent back to their homelands or to different countries, which I have no problem with. However, Guantanamo Bay prison is still open to this day. Okay, so that's with the Geneva Convention. Um, Now, this second question connects somewhat to the first one. I think not even somewhat, it connects a lot to the first question. What ethical concerns arises when it comes to the treatment of detainees and the use of enhanced interrogation methods? So, in we know that in the ethical concept, the treatment they receive violates their human rights. That's number one. How else would it impact? How else would this penalty impact the lives of the individuals? Even let's say after they're sent back to their homeland, even after they're released, or even after they're found not guilty or even guilty, how would this impact their psychology? How would this impact their lifestyle going forward?
I think after going through all the trauma, like all the torture that they experience, I feel like the post trauma, they're like losing their dignity and respect because of all the abuse that they had to endure.
Right.
So it's like they feel belittled even after they get to go home, wherever they're from. They still feel abused.
They still have the flashbacks.
Mhm.
So this I can relate to long-term consequence. The use of enhanced interrogation methods can have severe physical and psychological consequences for the detainees, which may at least which may last long after their detention. Such practices can lead to trauma, post-traumatic disorder, like you said, PTSD. They can arise mental illness from PTSD, and other long-term health issues, raising ethical questions about the lasting harm inflicted on individuals. Effectively and reliability. These there is considerable debate about the effectiveness and reliability of enhanced interrogation methods in obtaining accurate and actionable intelligence. Some argue that torture and abuse techniques can lead to false confession, misleading information, and compromised intelligence, making their use ethically problematic. So, would you now? This brings me to another part of this question. Would you agree with the fact that these interrogation methods, or even these long-term imprisonment of these individuals, are actually doing something, or are we actually getting intelligence and going somewhere with these intelligence?
I feel like it could go both ways. Like if someone is enduring torture for like a really long time and they don't want to say anything, sometimes after a while they will get tired and having to withstand all the pain. So they're either gonna tell the truth or just say something else to something that the officials would want to hear so that they can get out of having to deal with all of
Out of the system,
Mhm.
right? So, if let's say that they have said the truth, right, or they have given us information that we can use, we have succeeded at at our goals of obtaining intelligence from the detainees, right? However, what if they're given information that are wrong? Does this conflict in the mission of the military for holding the detainees?
It wouldn't be helpful.
Right, it wouldn't be helpful. Even these information can be incorrect, correct? Right. Okay, so going back to the discussion, if the information provided by the detainees at Guantanamo Bay valuable or valuable. Florbell over here will provide us with two examples of when the information provided by the detainees were valuable. So go ahead, you can provide us with the example.
Okay. So there have been instances
Oh,
where
wow.
Guantanamo Bay detainees provided valuable resources or information that supportedly contributed to intelligence efforts. However, it is important to note that the reliability and effectiveness of such information have been subject of ongoing debate, and there are also instances where the accuracy of the intelligence obtained from detainees has been questioned. One high-profile case that Abu Zubaydah, a suspected senior member of Al-Qaeda who was detained at Guantanamo Bay. Zubaydah was subjected to enhanced interrogation techniques, including waterboarding. U.S. officials claim that information obtained from Zubaydah under duress led to the capture of several other terrorists and disrupted potential attacks.
Stop. So the information received from Abu Zubaira. We please reread that so we can have the information that these information are actually helpful, because some of the people who says that like violating these or like torturous methods used on these individuals leads nowhere, which is totally false. Please restate that that information you just told us.
So, U.S. officials claim that information obtained from Zubaida under duress led to the capture of several other terrorists and disrupted potential attacks.
So it disrupted potential attacks, which saved American lives and our citizens and protected our liberties. So torturing these hard terrorists actually defended our nation, which is just insane that some people would say we should not use any torturous methods at all because on the name of protecting human rights or Geneva Conventions, which I totally disagree with. Okay, you can continue. Sorry to interrupt. It's just something I have to say.
However, it has been argued that the value of the information obtained through these methods is questionable, and that the traditional report-building interrogation techniques have been equally or more effective. Another example involves information provided by Guantanamo detainee Mohamedou Ould Slahi. Slahi's diaries were obtained during his detention, contained details about the Al-Qaeda's operation and members. Some argue that this information helped intelligence agencies gain insights into terrorist activities. However, others criticize the use of Slahi's diaries as they were obtained through coercive means and subjected to redactions, raising doubts about their overall accuracy and credibility. It is essential to approach claims of valuable resources obtained from Guantanamo detainees with critical analysis. The use of enhanced interrogation techniques, such as waterboarding and prolonged isolation, have been widely condemned as torture and raises concerns about the reliability of the information gathered under such circumstances. In some cases, the intelligence community has indicated that information obtained through harsh methods turned out to be false or misleading. It is also important to consider the potential ethical and legal implications of using information obtained from detainees under duress.
Right. So now she provided us with two examples where these information were actually very helpful to the American Intelligence Committee, right? And she also stated the fact that some information received from the detainees are misleading and not helpful. Actually, turns out to be harmful. And I will be providing you guys with two examples where the information were harmful. One example where information obtained from Guantanamo Bay detainees proved to be unhelpful and harmful to intelligence efforts in the case of Laban Ali al-Libi. So al-Libi, a Libyan national who was captured in Afghanistan in 2001, subsequently transferred to the U.S. custody at Guantanamo Bay. Under interrogation, he provided information that allegedly linked Iraq to Al-Qaeda and suggested that Saddam Hussein's regime was providing support and training to terrorist groups. The information he provided played a significant role in the Bush administration efforts to justify the invasion of Iraq in 2003. So this information which he provided was not accurate, and in fact, American politicians used these information for their own political gain. For example, Bush used these information to invade Iraq in 2003, claiming that Iraq possesses weapons of mass destruction and posted a threat to the United States. However, after the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the subsequent search of weapons of mass destruction, it became clear that the information provided by al-Libi was false. Al-Libi later reenacted his statements and revealed that he had provided false information under distress and torture. So again, this we mentioned before. Under distress and under torture, people would do anything to get out of that torture. So, which makes which is one con of using torture's method to get information, because you can get false information which will end up hurting the Americans. He admitted that he had fabricated the story about Iraq's shifting to Al Qaeda. To stop the abusive treatment he was subjected too during interrogations. The revelation of al-Libi's false information had serious implications. It undermined the credibility of the intelligence used to justify Iraq war, damaged the reputation of the U.S. government and intelligence agencies, and lead to international criticism and accusations of manipulations of intelligence to support pre-detrimental political agenda. So, like I said, this information was used for political gain by the Bush administration. The Bush administration did not know that these information were false to begin with. So just because he was being tortured, he gave out false information, which became criticized by the whole entire world. The Alibi's case serves the case highlights the dangers of relying on information obtained through uh, coercive and abusive interrogation methods. Not only can such information be unreliable and misleading, but it can also have significant consequences when used as basis for critical decisions, such as launching military actions and shaping national security policies. Al-Libi's case serves as a cautionary example of the political harm caused by the use of enhanced interrogation techniques and unreliable, undersources the importance of upholding ethical standards in intelligence gathering practices. It also undersources the need for rigorous evaluation and corroboration corroboration of intelligence before acting upon it. Partially, when it comes to forms of sources subjected to coercive methods. Right. So these are two examples of information that lead to a gain for the American intelligence community, and two examples which was harmful to the American intelligence community. So to wrap up, so we're about to wrap up right now. To wrap up, we're just going to rediscuss some of the topics we have mentioned, and we'll just draw a conclusion from here. So go ahead and just explain to us everything that we have mentioned so far, just in a brief short summary.
Well, the main thing I think was about how people have their human rights taken away from them being in the prison.
Right. So there are human rights. So we have mentioned human rights, and then what else have we mentioned?
The mistreatment.
The mistreatment that. So that's one. That's again. It falls under human rights again. So just to reiterate, some of the subtopics we talked about is detention and legal status of individuals in the Guantanamo Bay. And then the second topic we talked about is
interrogation techniques and controversy.
Right, that's our second topic that we spoke about. And the last one we spoke about, this was the one that we spoke about the most, was interrogation techniques and controversies. We also, interrogation techniques and controversies was mentioned before, sorry. It was human rights concerns and international criticism. Some of the questions that we discussed in this podcast were:
what is the legal basis for the detention of individuals in Guantanamo Bay, and how does it differ from traditional criminal justice systems?
The second question were: what are the challenges in determining the legal status of detainees and providing them with due right process?
The third is, how have interrogation techniques employed at Guantanamo Bay been viewed by international organizations and human rights advocates?
The last two questions were: what ethical concerns arise when it comes to the treatment of detainees and the use of enhanced interrogation methods? And the last one was: has the detention of individuals in Guantanamo Bay proven effective in gathering intelligence and preventing further acts of terrorism. It's both. The answer for the last one is both. But thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you guys learned something from this podcast. This will be posted on YouTube, and the link to this podcast would be sent directly to my professor. It wasn't the best, but we worked on it and we did our best. Um, so you guys can have a lot of, or at least some information on the Guantanamo Bay topic. Thank you so much, guys, again. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Professor does not need to do that. Hopefully, I get 100 out of 100. Do you have something to say? Just say thank you. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
See you later.